Thrilled to be here.
Are we're ready?
Go
This
on.
is it. So I feel as if I know you by now. I've had hours of conversation with you on the telephone to the article. But since the book is a novel, I don't think we want to give too much away. So I'd like to start talking about you and playing the name game.
Okay.
Your mother was actress Dixie Carter.
Yes.
We all remember from Designing Women, she was fabulous. You were named for her, but you don't consider yourself Southern. And you're called Mary Dixie and never just Mary or Dixie. Is
That's
that a
right.
Southern tradition?
Wait, sorry, say that last part
Is
again.
that a Southern tradition? If your name is Mary Dixie, you have to be called Mary Dixie. You can't just say Mary.
Well, I don't know if it's a Southern tradition, but it was definitely really important to my mother that the Dixie was in my name, like, and that everyone said Mary Dixie, and they said the whole thing. And she corrected people when I was a child. She was always correcting someone who said Mary. She was like, no, it's Mary Dixie. And my father did the same thing. He's not Southern, but he then did the same thing. And so I kind of picked up on that from them. And, I also would say, no, it's Mary Dixie. You have to say both names. It's Mary Dixie. Well, my mother's name was Dixie. And so that might be part of it, that she wanted her name as part of my name too.
So this gets better because your mother, Dixie Carter, married Arthur Carter. But
Yes.
they're not related. And so there were lots of Carters running around. There's a lot of confusion.
Very confusing.
Does your immediate family call you Mary Dixie? Does your husband call you Mary Dixie?
Yes. Yes. I have a few college friends who call me Mary D. And I have a couple of friends who call me MD or MDC, but not because I ever suggested it, just because they did. And that's I'm fine with that. But the vast majority of people call me Mary Dixie.
Okay. Well, I will never make such a mistake. Now you have some connection to Litchfield County. Because your father founded Litchfield County Times in 1981, which was an extraordinary paper, something this area needed. And then he also found the New York Observer, where you worked for a while.
That's right, yeah.
You were editor-in-chief there for a while?
I was not editor-in-chief. I was the publishing director for about 5 or 6 years. And it was an amazing experience to work there. And Peter Kaplan was the editor-in-chief at that time. For most years, he was, for many, many years, he was the editor-in-chief. And then when the paper was sold, I left shortly thereafter. But yes, the New York Observer was an amazing newspaper.
Yeah,
and
it was.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
I know. Yeah, sad to say.
Did you become an actress after your stay at the Observer?
No. So I was an actress before, and I left. I was in Los Angeles, and I came to work for my dad because he asked me to go to work for him at the New York Observer. So I moved east for that reason. And then so I kind of put acting aside, and I was there. And then after the Observer, then I wrote freelance for various different publications, for The Economist, for San Francisco Chronicle, Chicago Tribune. I wrote some book reviews, some arts reviews, and a few other kinds of things too.
So when we spoke, you said that you had written another novel, your first novel.
Yes.
and that everybody said it was very nice and nobody wanted to publish it. And you still have it. So maybe now you can pull it out again. But how many years elapsed between that novel and deciding to write this one?
Um, well, it may not be such a clear line because I went back to that first novel and tried to fix it and tried
Ah,
to rework it. And
uh-huh.
I kept going back to that first novel thinking if I only did, something, it may be that the thing about that first novel is I still think it's pretty good, but I don't think it is quite as commercial or quite as marketable. So I think that may be um, why it was not published. But so I don't have as clear a line for you between the end of that and because I was toying with that first novel probably up until I started the second novel, even though I wasn't even, even though in the back of my mind, I sort of knew I should move on, but I kept going back to it and trying to fix it.
Um, what phrase would you use to describe the photographer? It's not a thriller really. It's more psychological. It's kind of scary in a way. At least I found parts of it a little scary.
Um, so it's a good question. Maybe psychological suspense. A lot of people are calling it a thriller, and I'm perfectly happy for someone to call it a thriller. I'm perfectly happy for someone to call it anything if they buy it and read it and hopefully like it.
um, when you started it, did you realize you were writing into this particular genre, or did it start? Tell me how you got it together. Did you outline? Did you make notes? Did you wake up one morning and say, "Ah, I've got an idea for a book," and just start? What is the process for you?
So, I did not set out to write a thriller. I just started writing. The idea for this book came when I hired a photographer myself to take pictures of my two children. Um, a few years ago. I mean, quite a few years ago now, maybe 5 years ago. Um, she's a very talented photographer. The pictures came back and they were really beautiful, but the children's eyes in the photos were bright cobalt blue, and they're not in real life. And I said to the photographer, I'd like for my children's eyes to be their real color. And she said, there is no real color. And I was so struck by that point of view, and it stayed with me. That that view about photographs, and then that view about everything. And so this novel came to me really from that character, Delta Dawn, my first person narrator, and just like diving into her point of view and staying there in almost like a claustrophobic kind of way of what would this person who believes there is no real color and is kind of willing to erase what she saw to be true and kind of disregard it. What would she do, and what could she do, and how far could she go? And I didn't outline it. I just uh, stayed with that voice. I just stayed with Delta's voice and allowed that to lead me.
And were you able to get inside that character and sort of not manipulate, but sort of mold what she was going to be? So many novelists say that they sit down and the character tells them what to do. And in this case, it almost sounds as if you made this character and then you decided how to make her into what you wanted her to be.
Well, I think she was telling me what to do. I mean, I got that sort of core idea from that exchange with that photographer. But then it was like she was there. She was already this woman, like I could hear her voice, and I just let that voice decide where the story was going to go for the most part. I didn't control it that much.
Um, Tell me, I know the name is from a famous song by Tanya Tucker, but why did you decide to name her that, and why choose a name that is so associated with another genre, really, another music genre instead of a fiction?
Well, so the lyrics to that song, that character feels very similar to Delta Dawn. There's kind of there's certain emotional similarities. That was one thing. And then the other thing is Delta Dawn is a bit of a weird, odd name. And I have a little bit of an odd name living in Brooklyn and living in Los Angeles. I have this very Southern double name that kind of marks me as being a little bit different. And I wanted that for Delta Dawn in Brooklyn, in this setting, that she has these different things that mark her as being an outsider. So that's how I arrived at Delta Dawn.
She she we don't know a lot about her at the beginning, and she is in a sense an outsider, but she's so successful in what she does. And yet there's this strange persona inside her that kind of rules what she does. And I found is it a little contradictory because she's so successful. Why does she need to behave? And I can't tell too much of the story. That's the problem.
Right. So why are you asking, like, why does she need to kind of try to insert herself into this family's life?
Exactly. I mean,
And she could have her own nice life.
right, exactly.
Why does she need to take theirs, or not take theirs, but try to belong to this particular family? So that's a good question. And I think that's at the heart of who Delta is, which is like a very low self esteem. And she has a lot of success, and but she doesn't feel like she has any self worth. So she is trying to get her self worth from other people and from another family. And I know some people like this in real life, where they can have all the things that the outside world thinks of as successful. They can have a nice house, they can have a nice career, they can have all these different things, but then when it comes down to it, they still have this low self worth, and nothing can change that. And I think that's who Delta is she has this low self worth, and nothing can change that.
As I was reading, I kept thinking, we're going to find out something terrible about Delta, and that's why she behaves this way. But we never really do. It's kind of inherent in her personality, in what she wants to do and create. So we don't really know if she was ever affected by some other tragedy or trauma in her life that made her this way. And so
Right,
you wonder about the rationale and the impetus to do this. She could have the life of these people. I mean, she's
right.
wealthy enough to do that. And yet she wants to be them.
Yeah, yeah. She wants to be them, and her background. So her background, I refer to it, I mean, Delta refers to it in subtle little ways. It kind of glimmers of it peeking through. But Delta is really suppressing her background. She's trying not to acknowledge a lot of it. And because it's in first person, so the reader has uh, has to kind of guess at some of these things that are just indirectly mentioned, a tiny bit here, a tiny bit there, because Delta's not going to come out and talk about these things because she's denying them to herself, she's denying them to the world, she's kind of lying to herself all the time. I
Is,
think that is what, yeah, that's a key part of her personality, is just lying to herself. And I'm really interested in that. I'm interested in people who are lying to themselves, which we all do. I know
yes.
that I've done it, and everyone lies to themselves, but Delta really like takes that to, three levels above and beyond where most people go.
Is the reader meant to have any sympathy for her?
I hope so. Yes, I would love for people to have sympathy for her in, as much as they see her as being destructive and destructive, self-destructive too. I hope that people have compassion for her because it's coming from this place of pain. I think her behavior is coming from a place of deep pain. So I hope that people are like, oh, don't do that. That feeling of like, if only she would just not do that, it would be okay. That's what I'm hoping for. And also, the Strouds they're flawed people. They're very flawed. And
Yeah.
in some ways, they're just as flawed as she is. And they're using her and she's using them. Everyone's using each other. And so I don't come down on the side of saying that, Delta's the bad guy. I don't think she necessarily is, though she does a lot of bad things.
Do you think your years as an actress have helped you as a writer?
I definitely think so. I definitely think so because I do a lot of the same, I think about the character in a lot of the same ways that I did as an actor. I get into the body of that character and get into the mind of that character and find like what the person wants and think about like, even how they walk or how they move and stuff like that. So I think the same muscles that I would use as an actor, I definitely, especially for this book, because it's in first person and so kind of like really tight on Delta's point of view, I think acting helped a great deal. I think it did.
Now, this book has been sold to the movies, or
So I have sold the television rights, yes.
okay, great.
And
And, and
I'm
I
very,
know,
very excited about it. And it's a thrilling situation, but I'm not at liberty to give any details
no,
yet.
I
Soon
only
I'll be
brought it
able to.
up because I was thinking of you as an actress, and if, as an actress and a writer, if you had any thoughts about who would make the perfect Delta Dawn, and you probably don't want to mention that, but that's okay.
I don't want to mention it partly because whoever ends up playing Delta Dawn, I'll be thrilled about that. And I don't want to have said a different name,
Right.
that I wish it was so and so, and have, you know, just have anyone think, oh, that was not like who I wanted or who I was hoping for.
As a writer, what inspires you? What inspires you to sit down and start pecking at your laptop or writing in longhand if you write in longhand? I mean,
What inspires me, like on a particular day or in sort of overall sense?
overall, I mean, I know you had an idea for the novel, but are you inspired to write every day? Do you sit down and keep a diary? Do you keep a ledger, a ledger of any kind?
I don't keep a diary per se, but I do write a lot of notes on my computer, like ideas, that things that pop into my head. Um, I'll jot down a scene, maybe a couple of pages. So I do, I do keep notes, but not necessarily a journal. And one thing I think that in terms of what inspires me, it is sort of like the whether, no matter if I'm trying to write something funny or what, whatever genre is almost irrelevant, but the hard, harder moments in one's life are fuel for writing, in my opinion. Because the nice moments, you're not, you know, the difficult moments that stay with you, you can use that as material and go back to it. And it's very helpful to like, and also it kind of makes you feel better. Like, well, I had that difficult time, but at least I'm using it in the book. So it was all worth it.
Are there writers that have inspired you over the years?
So in terms of this book, Zoe Heller, Notes on a Scandal, that inspired me a little bit. And then the other one is Margaret Atwood, Handmaid's Tale inspired me,
right.
and also Patricia Highsmith. A couple of different Patricia Highsmith books inspired me. So there were like, you know, a few different books that I read either before or even while I was writing it that kind of spurred me on.
You recently returned from a month-long cross-country trip with
Yes.
family, and you got to visit bookstores,
Yes.
which in this age of pandemic is like, you know, it doesn't happen to anybody anymore. So what was that like? Did you just walk in and say, "Hi, I'm Mary Dixie Carter, and I wrote a book"? How did you arrange things before, or did you just stop and go in? It sounds like
Well,
great fun, actually.
in some cases, the bookstore was so supportive of the photographer early on, or maybe the bookseller or the bookstore was supportive early on and participated in the cover reveal and gave the book a blurb early on. And so in those cases, you know, in certain instances, I called them up ahead of time and said, coming through, I'd love to sign some books. And in other cases, I just stopped in, and in almost every, can't think of one time where it wasn't a really, really positive experience and just so happy. And a joy for me because it is, you know, because it is a pandemic, and it's nice to be able to like talk face to face with someone and talk about the book and sign the book and have that in-person experience was a lot of fun.
And did you get to meet readers as well, people who bought the book?
Sometimes, yes. It means I occasionally met readers in the bookstore. I mean, the booksellers were readers too, but I also, you know, talked to everyone that I've spoken to over the last couple of months, people in my kind of world. I've had a lot of different conversations about the book that have been amazing. And some people that I don't know have approached me like online to say really nice things about the book. And I mean, that's a thrill. That's a total thrill to have, especially someone that I don't know, make a point of saying that they really responded to my book.
Well, the reviews have been amazing for a first time out there in a kind of difficult, you know, field, because there's so many thrillers, mysteries, psychological books, and you've managed to get some amazing comments about it, which should be pretty thrilling.
It is really thrilling. I mean, I'm beside myself. The New York Times gave it a great review.
Yeah.
USA Today, People Magazine, and then it was in Entertainment Weekly recently, and it's gotten really wonderful reviews, and I'm so grateful that it has, and that it's gotten that kind of attention. I'm thrilled.
When you had a chance to speak to book buyers, were there any questions that came up that were sort of in the same uh, that were sort of the same? Was there a popular question people asked you?
Oh, people ask me about, I don't want to spoil it for those of you who have not
I know
read the book,
that.
but people do ask me about the ending a lot. They ask me about the character of Ian a lot and like what really happens to Ian, which is a little bit um, is open to interpretation. So there are a few things in the book that are open to interpretation. And so a lot of times readers ask about those things and like, what do I think? Like, what do I think really happened to Ian? Or, that very, very last scene for anyone who's read it,
Yeah.
where, you know, my interpretation of that or something like that.
It's interesting because you are left at the end to create your own theory about what has actually happened. And then you,
Yes.
well, maybe that's not right. And then you start thinking about, and then I reread it again, thinking maybe I missed something. Maybe I need to read this again. But it's kind of challenging in a way because you don't put the book down and forget about it right away. I have to say that.
Well, that's like one of the most wonderful things that you can say. And really, when readers have said that to me and they have that the book stays with them and that they're still thinking about it days later, I feel like so flattered by that. And I'm so glad that it has that effect on anyone.
And I'll bet people who read it might have second thoughts about hiring a photographer. Particularly one with a Southern name. If you had to go back and change if there is there anything you would like to change in photographer? Have you gone back and thought about it and say, oh, if only I'd done this instead of that, or was it just the way you envisioned it?
I haven't really. So since the photographer's been out in the world, I have not gone back and read it.
Oh.
But I read it so many times. I read it so many times, like while I was revising it. Then during the whole process of working with my amazing literary agent and editor, and like I read that book hundreds and hundreds of times. So I know it cold, but I haven't read it in, the last 2 months or whatever it's been since it's been out. And I'm sure that when I do, and I will, I'll say to myself, oh, I wish I'd done that slightly differently. I'm sure that I'll say that because that's just the nature of it, right?
Yeah, that second guessing can be a real problem for anybody.
Yeah.
Oh, I wish I'd done that instead of this or whatever. Um, I want to get back to your mother, who I was so crazy about. I watched Designing Women over and over and over and over and over again. Um, she died in 2010, and so she never knew your children, and obviously she never got to know about the novel. What do you think she'd say? I mean, and did she in real life, was she that character, Julia Sugarbaker? I mean, was there any trace of her in her behavior?
She was, she had a lot of presence. She walked into a room and she had a ton of presence and charisma. And that, in that way, she was very similar to Julia Sugarbaker and super smart. But she didn't, Julia Sugarbaker kind of puts everyone in their place and, is really tough in a certain way. And my mother was uh, a little softer in how she was not confrontational. I don't think she enjoyed confrontation. So that is a difference with her and with Julia Sugarbaker.
And how do you think she'd feel about the book?
About the book, I think she'd be so happy. I think she'd be so proud and so happy and thrilled for me. I think she'd just be overjoyed. I wish she were here.
I remember, this is the problem of mine. I always start talking about me. There was a diagnosis murder. There was an episode in which she played a lawyer who actually turned out to be the murderer. And it was just such a departure from Julia Sugarbaker, but she was just so good at it. She was just so, this ease which she could be this evil person. It was amazing.
Yeah. She could do a good villain, definitely. She was a good villain.
Now, also, sadly, your stepfather, Hal Holbrook, died before the book came out as well. He died earlier this year.
Right.
And I assume you were pretty close to him. And did he have a chance to look at the book at all? Did he know you were doing this?
He knew about the book. He was so happy for me about the book. He was so supportive of me. I was very close with him. And ever since, my entire life, he has been so supportive of me and believed in me and been just an amazing friend to me, in addition to being my stepfather. So I also feel sad that he is not here to enjoy the book being published and to actually see it and feel it and see that it's out in the world.
Is there a certain sadness about their not being here? Is that at all dampen your success, or are you just so pleased that you were able to do this? And in a way, they contributed to you. They were, the people who helped mold you along with your father. And
I think so. I am ecstatic about the book, period, end of story. But I do think that there's like this feeling that I imagine everyone has, which is you want your parents to see something that you did, that and appreciate it, so that you can feel like it really happened. So the same way a little kid is like, look, mom, look what I can do. I don't think that ever quite goes away, that feeling of like, look, mom. And so I felt like when my two children were born, my daughter was born 6 weeks after my mother passed away. And that was really hard. And and I wanted, I'm getting a little bit of it was a little hard when that happened. And as thrilled as I was when my daughter was born, there was a little sadness about, oh, my mother's not here to meet her. And the same thing, I would say, was a little bit true with the book, which is my mother's not here to see it. And there's a little sadness.
Speaking of your children, they are 8 and 11, is that right?
That's right, yeah.
So how do they feel about their mother, the author?
They're so happy. They're so cute and sweet and excited for me. I'm so lucky to have such wonderful children. I've told them both, though, they cannot read this book until they're 21. And my daughter, the 11-year-old, she's a big reader. She reads everything in sight. And she really keeps asking me if she wants to read the book. And I said, no, not until you're 21. So we'll see how that goes. But they're so cute and sweet and excited for me and supportive, as is my husband.
The trip across country, that was the first time you've ever done that?
Yes, that was an adventure. That was a total adventure.
What did you take away from it? What is the most unique or satisfying or special thing that you took away from that month that you will have with you forever, besides the book?
Besides the book, well, I think spending that kind of concentrated time with my children. So we rented an RV and drove cross country, and that's something I never thought that I would do that I would rent an RV, but we drove through all the national parks, and it was a lot of concentrated time with my 2 children and my husband, and then some nephews joined us for parts of the trip. But there was something really sweet about it being like in one room essentially. The RV is not that big, and with them all the time. And there's something really wonderful about that because, you know, in normal life, everyone's got their activities and things going on, and everyone's, you know, running different directions sometimes. But that was a very intense amount of time together. That was nice.
Yeah. You spent time in Litchfield County when your father owned the paper and that kind of thing, and you're back here. We were always here? Are you back again? Did you leave here and come back, or were you
Wait,
always?
so sorry, say that question again.
Well, are you were in Litchfield County when, I assume, when your father owned the paper,
Yeah.
and did you leave and come back, or have you always been in
Oh,
Litchfield County?
I did leave and come back. But you know, I would visit my dad a lot over the years. So it's not like I was away for, you know, any long period of time. I would visit my dad from time to time. So, but now my husband and I and our children, we have a house here, and that's, you know, that's a really special thing
And
to
your
be
favorite thing
here.
about living up here? I always ask this question.
Do I ever think about what now there's
You-
like a thunderstorm outside. So, and it's strangely loud. So forgive me for asking again.
No, what is
What
your
was the
favorite
last question?
your favorite thing about living up here?
Oh, my favorite thing. I just love like going for long walks and nature and seeing the beautiful trees and just being outdoors and being able to be outdoors a lot. I love that.
And are you able to divorce yourself from the environment and sit down and write without being distracted? I'm always
Um,
distracted by something. It's like,
it's no, it's definitely hard to, no matter where I am, it's hard to totally focus and shut out everything else that's going on. So, but I think that there's some serenity to being here, and that is a good state of mind for writing. That kind of feeling of serenity and kind of peaceful feeling.
and speaking of writing, I know authors hate to talk about what they're working on, but are you working on or thinking about a new novel?
So I am working on a second novel, and I don't have anything interesting to share about the second novel, except that I'm working on it, and I'm kind of circling around like a dog to try to find. It's like there's this center core of the book, and
Mhm.
I'm circling that, and I'm still in the circling stage. So there isn't that much to tell yet.
Well, I can't tell you how much I enjoyed reading the book, and I'm thankful to Fran Keelty for saying you've got to read this book. Or I
Oh,
wouldn't have
me
known. I
too.
wouldn't have. You know, there's so many books I probably wouldn't have known about it unless I, read a review and thought, oh, I have to read this. But having read the book and talked to you, I feel as if I have a special connection to the book now.
Oh, it was such a pleasure. It's such a pleasure for me, and thank you for the kind things you said about the book.
Wow. So we could open it up to, it's about 7:15 now. And you wanted to open it up. Do you want to open up to their questions and people can talk directly to Mary Dixie?
Yeah, if anybody has a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask away.
So, Mary Dixie, thank you for doing this. Welcome back from the tour.
Hello, good to see you. Thank you for joining.
I'm sorry, I just went to hide in the garage. I had to get off the porch because of the thunderstorm. as you said.
The thunderstorm's crazy.
Yeah, it's going nuts out there. So like we're hiding. So I apologize for the background. But we were so delighted at Hickory Stick. They're completely featuring the book, and we were lucky enough to buy it. But Shauna took it first, and we don't have book comments yet, but I'm delighted to hear that the RV tour went really well.
It did.
Because I was a little worried when I saw that in your driveway. Yeah.
It's a big car. It's very big, 31 feet long.
Yeah, and thinking of Steve driving that, I mean, I don't know if he's got that chauffeur's license yet or not, but that was very brave of you. And you said you went to the national parks. How far did you go? Tell us, what did the tour encompass?
Well, we went all the way to Colorado and back, and but not directly. We hit Badlands National Park, Yellowstone National Park. Before that, Niagara Falls. We saw so many beautiful Custer State Park. We saw so many beautiful parks and sites along the way, and so many parts of the country that I haven't seen. Children definitely hadn't seen. So it was some experience. It really was.
So do you think for Christmas, Eleanor and Henry are going to go? We want another RV.
They may do that. Yeah. They may do that. I don't know if we're going to do another RV trip, but I'm sure they'll ask for it.
That's fabulous. Well, welcome back. Congratulations. We are, the entire lake community is seriously overly excited that, you published this. It's gotten great reviews. We've talked to neighbors, both sides, all around you. We're going to have like a book club event, and we're definitely, come for tea and crumpets.
Yay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining tonight.
I'm delighted. We could not have missed it. And look out, and so we're both gonna lose power here in about 5 minutes.
I know. I'm waiting for that.
Okay, I'm gonna go back on the mute.
Okay.
All right. Anybody else have a question or comment?
Yeah. Are you done with these characters?
These characters, so yes. The short answer is yes.
That's not the answer I want.
Sorry, what?
That's not the answer I want.
The second book doesn't have anything to do with Delta Dawn or Amelia or anyone. Now, maybe one day I might write something about one of them again, but it's not coming in the immediate future. Not right away.
Not right away. You definitely left it open in the end, though.
That's true. That's true.
I think the characters are so complex that you could actually take it from a couple of different angles, I hope.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's possible that the TV series will, add to this storyline. So I don't know for sure if it's going to be just one season or if they'll develop it, and who knows.
I read the book in 2 days and I enjoyed it thoroughly. And like Joseph, I'm glad that Fran at Hickory Stick, implored me to read it. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I also just want to say how grateful I am to Hickory Stick and Gun Memorial Library for this wonderful event, and of course grateful to Joseph for interviewing me and talking to me.
Whose dog is now barking because the thunder and lightning and rain has finally reached Litchfield.
Oh, has it?
Oh.
When you were talking about the storm, I looked out, I said, what storm? And then suddenly it's like this torrential rain is coming down. Well, it was delightful to meet you. I'm hoping we will run into each other at some point.
Definitely.
Any last questions or comments? No, it looks like that's it. Well, thank you so much, Mary Dixie Carter and Joseph, for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Just for everybody, just so you know, there will be a recording of this program posted to our website probably Thursday morning. So you can visit gunmemoriallibrary.org and find our link there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.